Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
And welcome to High Plains Church. It's so wonderful to see so many of your beautiful and smiling faces this morning. So this is the first Sunday of our 2015-2016 church year. Woohoo! Yeah, welcome back, everyone. As I think about our church, I think about how it is home, our spiritual home for so many of us. And with that in mind, Cindy and I are going to share a reading called The Home That Love Made by Amanda Pape.
This is the home that love made.
It is full of the love that the founders felt when they purchased this building. This is the home that love made.
It is full of the love of all who have worshiped here, those who have celebrated and grieved here, the babies dedicated, couples married, and family members mourned here. This is the home that love made.
It is full of the love of our children as they learn and laugh together, and our youth as they grow into their own sense of purpose and meaning. This is the home that love made.
It is full of the love of the staff who have served it, full of their hopes for this congregation, their hard work, and their acts of dedication. This is the home that love made.
It is full of the love of our choir, the love that made so clear in the voices lifted here on Sunday morning. This is the home that love made.
It is full of our love, the love of this community, despite our differences and our disagreements, the love that holds us together as a people. This is the home that love made.
Can you feel it?
May this love be with us always.
Amen. Come, let us worship together.
In my 33 and a half years on this earth, I have lived in 28 different residences across 5 states and 2 countries, and 13 of those were before I turned 18. Given that I've moved around so much, you can probably guess that the question, "Where are you from?" has always been a bit of a difficulty for me. Sometimes when people see me struggling to answer, they'll rephrase the question. They'll ask, "Well, where do you call home?" Though I know that they're trying to help, this second question is only slightly less complicated than the first. And the truth is that I really have 2 different answers, though usually I just give them the easier one of, home is wherever my things are. But if I was really being honest, I'd tell them that home for me has always been more of a feeling than a place. And that the first place that I ever felt like home wasn't the house where I lived. It was my church. You see, my family started attending the First Unitarian Church of Dallas when I was 5. And even though we would move to a different part of the city every year or so, we never changed churches. So this constant in my ever-changing young life certainly had something to do with my feeling about the church. But the thing that really made the difference is how I felt when I was there. When I was at church, I knew that I could be myself, which was something I didn't feel like I could do much of any place else in my life. You see, not only was I the scholarship kid at the really fancy private school, but I'm also the daughter of a liberal New York Jew and a hippie from California. In a home with no processed foods, no white sugar, and where chocolate chip cookies were actually made with carob chips, I really didn't fit in with other kids in Dallas, Texas in the late 80s and early 90s. But in a world where I usually felt like an outsider, the church was my safe haven. It was the place where I could go and relax and play and just be myself. For me, that's what it means to be home. Our worship theme this month is invitation. So this week, I want to invite all of you to think of this church, this place, this community, as something you might think of as home. As the director of faith formation here at High Plains, and as someone who has found home in this community, I light this chalice with the hope that whether it happened years ago or sometime in the future, each and every person in this room will find that this community allows you to be yourself, to relax, to play and have fun, and be accepted exactly as you are. Welcome home.
All of our life, your life and mine, are made up of sustained primarily by water. And we find it almost everywhere we go. Can you think of a place you've never found water? Maybe a desert or two, eh? Yeah. It is a symbol of the many individual paths we travel, especially in the summertime. And it is a symbol of the universal connection that we have with one another and with all of life, because it flows through everything. As a child, and even as later as a teacher, the beginning of school always felt like the true new year. We have been off doing summertime activities, swimming, visiting friends, traveling, gardening, hiking, and many, many other things. It's generally a busy time of year, but significantly different than the school year. Wouldn't you agree? So this is our time to gather back into community for a new beginning, because we're together once again. As we bring our waters from important and meaningful places, we share a bit of ourselves and who we have become as we are touched and changed by all that is our lives. The water that we share mingles with water from life experiences, from hundreds, maybe even thousands of others throughout the history of this tradition at High Plains Church Unitarian Universalist. This is the coming together of our community, which is strengthened and blessed by each person joining with those who have come before. By coming together, we recreate this sacred space where we all belong. We come back from our many adventures of the summertime to our spiritual home where we are loved, accepted, and where we belong.
Before we begin, let us celebrate all of the elements of our world. On our altar, earth, represented by this lava rock, which came from deep within the earth. And these candles have the element of fire, giving us light and warmth. We have scarves representing air as they easily blow in the fresh breeze that renews all life. This morning, we will have 4 periods of sharing whatever water we have brought. We want to honor not only where our water comes from, but also what it means to us, what it symbolizes in our own lives. First, we will have a chance to share water that reminds us that while some have abundance, others struggle with drought and scarcity. Second, we will share water that symbolizes travel, movement, and change. Third, we will share water that reminds us of life's storms, our concerns, worries, frustrations, and losses. And finally, we'll share water that reminds us of the well springs of our lives. Please don't worry about which time for sharing is the right time. The great thing about symbols is that they're always open to many interpretations.
In our world today, there are about 1.1 billion people without access to safe drinking water. I dedicate the water from last year, from last year's water communion that we have poured in as a symbol of our solidarity with the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, and all those around the world who are calling for the human right to have water. We also dedicate this water to those in California and other places who are experiencing record-breaking drought. The suffering is greatest with crops, livestock, and whole communities who have run out of water. If you would like to share water representing an awareness of scarcity in the world, please come forward using the middle aisle and pour your water into our common bowl. Simply share the name of the place the water represents or where it is from. And of course, if you did not bring water, please pour some from one of our glass pitchers. You are always welcome to share silently. You do not need to speak to share. Thank you. The water of storms. Storms bring much needed water, and at other times, too much water. We too experience storms in our lives, some which can be just as overwhelming as a flood. Let us share water symbolizing these storms, the concerns and sorrows, frustrations and confusions, and of course, the many tears of life. Allow this vessel of water to be one of receiving and healing as it absorbs your storm. Again, you're welcome to name the significance of the water or pour it into the water without saying anything at all.
The waters that sustain us. Water nourishes us, sustains us, and helps us to grow and heal. As we conclude our water communion, I invite you to bring a water that reminds you of the well springs of your life, the water that sustains you when you are feeling empty, the joys that give you hope and lift you up.
You have brought this water into your lives and now into our community through all of your experiences. All these life experiences have become a part of you and are now a part of us. We too intermingle into our unique and distinct community, built on the flowing movement of those who have come before us. As this loving faith community, we become a container where each person is held with care, acceptance, and understanding. There are hands to hold yours with strength and support and solidarity. This is that special place you can always come home to no matter what life brings. We nurture each other through it all, inspiring each other with new hope and recognizing that others need us too. This is where we take action together to serve others and make a meaningful difference in the world. We are all swimming to the other side, and it is so much easier and rewarding and meaningful when we make the journey together. This is the home that love made. Welcome home. If you think about it, drops of water are rarely disconnected from other drops of water. And when they are, it isn't for long. For we too need one another. Let us close by giving thanks for all the people who are our lives and for the way we come together in this community to support and love one another. May it continue to be so. Amen.
The Invitation by Oriah Mountain Dreamer. It doesn't interest me what you do for a living. I want to know what you ache for, and if you dare to dream of meeting your heart's longing. It doesn't interest me how old you are. I want to know if you will risk looking like a fool for love, for your dream, for the adventure of being alive. It doesn't interest me what planets are squaring your moon. I want to know if you have touched the center of your own sorrow, if you have been opened by life's betrayals, or have become shriveled and closed from fear of further pain. I want to know if you can sit with pain, mine or your own, without moving to hide it or fade it or fix it. I want to know if you can be with joy, mine or your own, if you can dance with wildness and let the ecstasy fill you to the tips of your fingers and toes without cautioning us to be careful, to be realistic, to remember the limitations of being human. It doesn't interest me if the story you are telling is true. I want to know if you can disappoint another to be true to yourself. If you can bear the accusation of betrayal and not betray your own soul. If you can be faithless and therefore trustworthy. I want to know if you can see beauty, even when it's not pretty, every day, and if you can source your own life from its presence. I want to know if you can live with failure, yours and mine, and still stand on the edge of the lake and shout to the silver of the full moon, yes. It doesn't interest me to know where you live or how much money you have. I want to know if you can get up after the night of grief and despair, weary and bruised to the bone, and do what needs to be done to feed the children. It doesn't interest me who you know or how you came to be here. I want to know if you will stand in the center of the fire with me and not shrink back. It doesn't interest me where or what or with whom you have studied. I want to know what sustains you from the inside when all else falls away. I want to know if you can be alone with yourself and if you truly like the company you keep in the empty moments.
Well, I confess that I love this poem by Oriah Mountain Dreamer. And yet it always makes me a little bit nervous because I hear myself thinking, yes, I want to be that person. That's just great. And in some way or another, I think about it and no, I'm often not that person. Because all of the pain in my life does not always open me up. Sometimes I shut down instead. I am not always true to myself. And I sometimes can't sit in the fire of life's challenges and stay there. I choose to instead turn on the TV and forget my troubles for a little while. I love this poem, but in some ways I hear it as a judgment. So why does Oriah Mountain Dreamer call this the invitation? You see, I think she calls it the invitation because she knows that most of us are not the person that she is describing. She is inviting us to look more deeply into who we might be. One thing is for sure, that I do feel inspired by this poem every time I hear it or read it, because something in me longs so deeply to live that wide open and true to my heart and my soul. Oh, but the courage that takes. Skipping ahead. We all have these inner conversations where our beliefs develop our worldview. And our worldview develops our perspectives, which influence our choices, which in part determines what our next experiences will be, right? Y'all with me on that? And sometimes there are so many voices in that conversation that it is really hard to sort it all out. And then, again, there are some times that there is this very dominant voice that overrules all the others. Do you know the one I mean? That is the voice that is the champion at talking us into some dark corner of hopelessness. You know that voice. It is the one that tells you that you can't do something very important to you. That maybe you're not smart enough. Maybe you're not worthy enough. Whatever it is, we have our own narratives, but we all have this voice. And it backs everything up with these amazingly reasonable arguments, doesn't it? So how can it do that? It is the same voice that reminds you how worthless you might feel. And it shames us and it tortures us with negativity. It tells us, no, you can't. You mustn't. No. And every no backs us further into a corner. So often I talk to people and they're really great at justifying why they're in a dark corner. And they don't realize that if they just turn around, there's a whole wide world beyond that dark corner. So what is the invitation here? How do we find our way back to a life of yes? Last week, if you were here, we had a delightful service with the guest musician and speaker, Ellen Stapenhorst. And after the service, Ellen and I and Steve were out talking during lunch, and I asked her about a statement. She mentioned Buckminster Fuller as one of her mentors. Now, Buckminster Fuller, if you don't know, was an American architect, systems theorist, author, designer, and inventor. So I asked her, how could he possibly have become your mentor? So she began to tell us stories about Bucky Fuller. And there was one story that haunts me that I really want to share with you. Bucky had a young family back in the 30s, and he was young and was trying to find his direction in life, and he had actually been kicked out of Harvard twice. They let him back in. And interesting man, brilliant as you might know. And when he was young, his 4-year-old daughter died from polio and spinal meningitis, which of course was a tremendous tragedy for him that left him feeling depressed. And he blamed himself for her death because of their damp and drafty living conditions. So he began to search how to provide affordable and efficient housing, not only for himself, but for other people as well, which led him to become president of a building company. But he lost his job and he began to drink heavily. He felt his family would be better off without him, so he contemplated suicide. Living in Chicago, he decided one day that he would just end it all by walking out into Lake Michigan. As he stood on the shore contemplating his death, he had a profound realization that it wasn't all of him that needed to die, but just that part of him that was not dedicated to serving humanity. So he vowed to embark on, quote, an experiment to find what a single individual could contribute to changing the world and benefiting all of humanity. And he dedicated the rest of his life to this experiment. His life took a profound shift, and we all now benefit from his innovations and his writings today. He asked what we can all ask from those dark corners of our lives. What is the invitation here? Through the asking, where's the invitation in this very dark space? He found a way back to yes, and his life took off after that. Now, we all can't have, nor would we want to have, the experience that Bucky Fuller had. But just this notion of invitation brings the notion of new possibility, of thinking differently, of seeing outside the box that we are in. Every moment of every day we are invited to dig more deeply past all of that surface negative nonsense, the automatic thoughts and responses, to a more genuine and honest part of ourselves. Our deepest calling, Parker Palmer tells us, is to grow into our authentic selfhood, whether or not it conforms to some image of who we ought to be. As we do so, we will not only find the joy that every human being seeks, we will also find our path of authentic service in the world. And yet, we can't do this alone. It is a difficult swimming to the other side, as we mentioned, and it is best when done with others and in a supportive environment. Some people think that a church is for praising God, the God we may or may not believe in. But having true friends that help bring you back to your deepest, most authentic self is nothing short of divine. And it is the heart and soul of this church. This is who we are in community, helping each other in a myriad of ways to accept the invitation of returning to yes. We nurture each other, and we are nurtured by this community. We are inspired by each other, and we inspire others. And together, we take action to serve the world. This is who we are, and this is where we come back to today. So again, I say, welcome home. For in those hands, you are holding the hands of this community. In these hands, you are holding those who will hold you up in your darkest of times. In your hands, you are holding someone who is ready to find their way back to yes. We are all swimming together, my friends. May we hold each other in great love, for this is the divinity of this loving faith community. Let's carry that forward throughout this entire year. That's my invitation to you. May it be so. Amen, and let's go.